Muskie, get him! Net! Gas to Brent. I'm hurrying. Shit. Yes! One last cast, Muskie, baby! Yes!
Yep.
Hey guys, this is James Beam from MWA. I want to do part 3 of our vlog series, and this one's going to be entitled Lake X Little Bastard. As I had said previously in some of the vlogs, I'm kind of going through my fish log and talking about some of the highlights of the 2020 muskie season. And instead of going through each fish, because a number of them were caught on similar tactics, I basically wanted to highlight what worked well for me this year. And as you saw in a previous clip, which is basically pulled out from the Last Cast Muskie episode, that you just saw footage of, is that one of my most productive baits for the 2020 season was the topwater bait, and that's the Lake X Little Bastard. So I'm not traditionally a big topwater guy. I'll use topwater basically occasionally. However, historically I haven't really had a whole lot of success using topwater. That is until this last year I saw the Lake X lure, the smaller profile, the Little Bastard at some of the muskie shows. Some of my thought process is that you have this more subtle topwater bait. It could be something different, it's something new, but I really like the subtle aspect of it. And basically, my experience with topwater is I get a lot of follows and wakes behind it. I felt that perhaps that this smaller profile would trigger some more strikes. So as you saw in the Last Cast Muskie episode, indeed does work, and that was a really nice fish. So to fill you in on what happened on that night, so that night it was 8:59, league ends at 9 o'clock, and that's why it was called the Last Cast Muskie. It was a clear day. It was let's see here, June 16th, on the Wisconsin River in the Wausau area. It was 80 degrees and calm. Water temp was 68, and that fish was caught on a frog-colored Little Bastard. This is my favorite color, Little Bastard, but I do have a number of them. What I have found is, I would have probably stuck with the frog one all year round, but after you catch a few fish on them, they do tend to not work as well. And this one kind of started to show its age, if you will, and so therefore I started buying some other ones. But it'll still run okay. I just really got to kind of try to give it a tune-up and see if we can get it to run just right. So, so that was that fish, and that was a nice, healthy, fat 44-inch muskie, and it was really good. So one of the things I also wanted to point out is that these baits, by themselves, they're smaller baits. They're a little less buoyant than like the Fat Bastard or Cannonball Juniors, obviously, or even the Dr. Evil. So as a result, I like to make a short. This happens to be like I think it's a 160-pound piano wire leader, and I'll tie it directly to the line tie of the Little Bastard, and then put it right on a swivel. The idea here is that these baits are less buoyant. You don't want to sink it with a real heavy leader that's sticking out in front of it. The other modification I like to do is I like to put a little piece of heat shrink over the rear hook. Talking to the guys at Lake X, they said that they didn't do that. They do this on their larger baits, but they didn't do that on this one simply because this was designed for bass, and by putting the heat shrink on there, it would take some of the skipping action that the bait is able to do underneath docks and whatnot for the bass approach. However, if you're going to be using this for muskies, I would recommend putting a piece of heat shrink on the rear hook, because one of the things that's annoying about this bait is that the rear hook does get caught on the prop quite a bit, and it tends to get fouled up. You don't want to be over good water and have a fouled up hook. So those are two of the modifications that I highly recommend that you do. If you do want to employ the little bastard. I typically use about an 8-foot rod with 300 series reel and 65-pound braid, and it seems to be the ticket. I use a tooth tamer, heavy action fast, and then on that rod I do have a 13 fishing A3 7-to-1 gear ratio, and it seems to be perfect setup for bringing these in. So the next little clip I want to show you kind of shows what this bait looks like going through the water. It was 2 nights after the previous fish was caught. I was out with the jobster. We were again on the same body of water, different spot, and she was working the bait as it was designed to be worked, and it was just kind of slowly plopping on the surface. As you can see in the video, kind of comes in real subtly, and a fish came up and committed to it. Now that fish it did commit to the bait, but it never got hooks in it. So as you can see from this technique, and she's doing essentially what I would have done, is I like to work these baits in fairly slow. You can't really work these in quite as fast as some of the other topwater presentations, especially props, because what it likes to do is it likes to spin around, or it'll tend to lean off to one end. And I like to keep the eyes looking right at you where they are, and that keeps you with a nice slower profile, and I think that it really triggers some more of the less active fish to come up and take a swipe at these baits. So that's my tactic on these fish. So hopefully you're able to see how the bait looks like when it's coming in, see about the appropriate speed, and you can see that it's a pretty subtle approach. The next fish I want to talk about, it was caught on June 21st at about 8:30 in the evening. Again, it was caught on this frog-colored little bastard, and it was over some shallow weeds. This night happened to be raining, and it was about 70 degrees with some light winds, so it was tolerable to be out there fishing. It was right as the sun was getting later in the sky, lower in the sky, and the light was getting a little bit less. Which is when topwater shines, and the little bastard really does work during those conditions as well. And this one came up and basically sucked it off the top of the water and got hooks in it and brought it in. So that's the other thing I wanted to let you guys be aware of, is that when you're using these smaller baits, it seems, and I'm sure that there's exceptions to this, but it seems, as far as a pattern as I've been able to determine, is that when the muskies come up and take this bait off the top of the water, they're not completely destroying this bait and making the gigantic splash and coming out of the water, which is super excited. But these, when the muskies come up and take this bait, they just come up and kind of roll on it and suck it in, and pause for a couple of seconds, and then you set the hook. So when do you know when to set the hooks? Everybody knows with topwater, you got to be a little bit more patient. You don't want to rip the hooks out of the mouth. Typically, I'll keep going until and it's very hard to do sometimes, especially when your adrenaline is going. You see the fish swirl out there, and you want to just rip the hooks right away, but that's kind of almost a surefire way to rip it out of its mouth. What I like to do is keep the bait coming in, keep reeling in, and try to have the discipline that it takes, that you don't set the hooks until you can actually feel the fish. So once you feel the fish, you can feel free to set the hooks and usually get a pretty decent hook set on it. And the last fish I want to show you guys, this was a kind of a really cool story, and it is also a very nice fish on the Wisconsin River system as well, down in Stevens Point. So this fish, the last one I want to show you, and you'll see four photos of it, and you'll see it's a very beautiful fish. It was caught on July 28th. It was a clear night, 75 degrees, light winds, and the water temp was 78 degrees. That one happened to be caught on the perch-colored little bastard. Now, the reason why this story I feel is unique is two reasons. That this fish showed itself. It followed in. I saw him on the figure 8 after fishing all night without really seeing anything. Couldn't get to go on the figure 8, and then it eventually committed on a full cast. So that brings me up to another thing about topwater. My theory on topwater is you attracted their attention on the top. So when I'm out there doing a figure eight with topwater, I like to do the first figure eight with keeping the bait on the top. Once you do one full figure eight, kind of come on the top and then let the bait dive. And then when you're on the outside turn, bring it back up on the top and then diving it down in the middle. Now I haven't caught a whole lot of muskies on topwater in the figure eight, but that's typically what I like to do, and it kind of gives the fish some options as to what they want to go on. But the reason why this fish was so cool is it came in on top and then it hit on a long one. But the humorous part about it is that I had this particular evening, I happened to be fishing in my John boat, not my jet boat, and I have one deep cycle battery in there and a 12-volt trolling motor and then a Honda 25 horse on it. Well, for some reason, perhaps I don't know why, maybe I didn't have the battery charger hooked up correctly or whatever, got out to the Wisconsin River in Stevens Point and the battery was saying it was low. So I ran into Reign Supreme and the Real Deal while they're out on the water, and I was like, I think I'm gonna have to go home early because I'm afraid I'm gonna get stranded without any battery power. I usually run that 12-volt Tarova all day long, but they had actually a good idea. I know, surprising, they actually did have a good idea. Hey, why don't you keep that Honda running and use it as a generator to charge your battery as you're out fishing? And so that's what I did for the remainder of the evening. And so as this fish came in and followed it through the figure eight and later, 2 casts later, committed on it, it was with the motor running at about, I don't know, a little bit above idle RPM to keep the batteries charged. So that was pretty exciting. But yeah, you'll see that fish here. It was a beautiful fish, and again, about 43 1/4. Hopefully that these vlogs are beneficial for you. You're taking something out of it. If you have any questions, let me know. And the last little tidbit I'll throw out there is that I love the little bastards, and I got a couple more of these. But I'm also going to be trying a little something different this year too. Similar profile. Is I ordered these off of the internet, Amazon to be exact. They're made by a Sea Night company. They kind of remind me of a Whopper Plopper, but a smaller version of it. They're about the same profile, so I'm going to give those a go, just to try something a little bit different. I did find that you can work these a little faster, so might be good for higher current conditions or whatever. The big thing is that they're much less expensive. So if you're interested in where I found these, I'd be happy to send you a link to them as well. So thanks very much. Please subscribe, share, and like. Have a good one.